way. I was recording that, but it's not, it's not canon because it didn't happen after the introduction. Okay, you ready? All right, here we go. Hey, what's up, America? This is Goodnight America. I'm America's sweetheart, Eric Ryan. That's a lot of Americas, which is sort of like alliteration to some degree, which James Bond, author of Brain Glue, How You Can Sell More Stuff If You Make Your Message Sticky, believes in. He believes in a lot of stuff. And I said this to him before the show started, not that anybody cares, but I believe a lot of what he believes, but it's meaningless coming from me because I'm a nobody. But James Bond is a somebody. You, sir, let's run down your credentials because okay, correct me if I'm wrong. You used to own an advertising agency in Montreal. Is that right?
Yeah.
You moved down to the United States a while ago. I bet you're regretting that decision now. Well, we might send you back. Let's see what happens. But so what? Walk me through the clients you had and all the way through writing this book, if you will.
Sure. So I'm originally from Montreal. I've been in Southern California for 39 years. Actually, I have a son and 3 daughters, and our middle daughter, we gave her the initials L.A., Lauren Asia, so that we'd remember. How long have you been in Los Angeles? Oh, how old's Lauren? So we got that. Although it's really funny because we named her Asia, AJA, from the Steely Dan album. And so 2 years ago, she said to me, like, Asia's a really cool name. People love it, and I love it. Like, how come you named me Asia? And I said, well, because of Steely Dan. They have a song, Asia, and an album. She calls me back in about an hour and she says, I listened to that. I hate that song. I'm sorry. I said, come on, it's creative. These guys are like really creative. That's why I gave you that name. And she goes, anyway, she started to like
See, creativity all the time. You bake creativity into everything you do, which is nice because most people don't.
Well, you have to. I mean, I saw a guy has a t-shirt that says life sucks and then you die. And I'm like, no, life is right now. It's got to be awesome. But that's why Brain Glue is so powerful. So I'm in Montreal. I built an advertising agency and we ended up winning major clients like Kraft Foods, Timex, watches, Avon Cosmetics, Abbott Laboratories, Seagram's, their world headquarters in Montreal. And so I had an opportunity to win the anti-drug campaign in America, because these guys knew me and said, wow, you really know how to do cool stuff. So I created a logical campaign, logical reasons why you should not do drugs. Then I saw the ad that beat us. And it was a guy holding an egg saying, this is your brain, cracking a shell and dropping the egg into a sizzling frying pan. This is your brain on drugs. Any questions? Yeah. When I saw the ad, it scared the hell out of me. I mean, 2 things happened. First is I recognized this is infinitely more powerful than what I had. I had all these logical reasons why you should not do drugs. But this is emotional selling, not logical. And it's like, I don't know. How do you do emotional selling? I don't know how to do it. In school, they don't teach it. I went to a library. There are no books on it and everything else. It's some superficial, but nothing really talks about it. And so what I did was I write stuff on a 3x5 card. So I wrote Your Brain on Drugs. And right next to my computer, I put a box. And I called it the Passion Box. Part of me was scared, but part of me said, if I get enough examples of this, because I know what it is, we know when we're emotionally affected. We just don't know how to create it. I didn't know how to create it, and most people didn't. Mm-hmm. So what I did was I created this box. I called it the Passion Box. And so whenever I see something or hear something that's really emotionally powerful, let me, put it in a sample in the box so I could remember what it is. And hopefully there'll be enough samples so I'll learn how emotional selling works. 10 years later, I moved to Southern California and I met John Gray. And John Gray's telling me about this book he wrote, fabulous book called Men, Women, and Relationships. And people who read it said, this is the most incredible relationship book I've ever read, but almost nobody was buying it. So one day he's doing a seminar trying to promote the book. And one woman says, he says something and all the women start laughing and the men are looking at the women going like, what's so funny? You ever get that where you're laughing and a woman's not laughing? And so he says, men sometimes are so different. And it's almost like we're from a different planet. Men are from a different planet than women. And one woman says, what planet are men from? And he says, I guess men are from Mars. And everybody starts laughing. And when he gets home, he goes, geez, more people responded to Men Are From Mars when I said that than they respond to my book. What if Men Are From Mars, where are women from? Well, women are from Venus. Venus is the god of love. Yeah. What if I change the title of the book to Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus, and just put some references throughout the book, but keep the same basic book? He said, you wouldn't believe what happened. Almost overnight, 500,000 copies got sold, then 1 million and 2 million. In my book, I made a mistake because I said there are 10 million books. I did research and asked him. But I know this guy who helped him from a marketing standpoint. And he said, no, you're wrong. We're over 50 million books sold.
Wow.
You know, he changed the title to this a metaphor, you know. I mean, men are not from a different planet. All you women out there, we are not really from a different planet, but we act like it sometimes. So I can understand where you're coming from. You guys act like you're from a different planet too. But anyway, but just by changing the title, suddenly sales exploded. And I started to think like, what, you know, first I was going to put the book inside my passion box, but then I went, wait a second, this is a metaphor. Like the ad with this is your brain on drugs. That's a metaphor too. You know, that's not, you know, they're probably sitting around a table going, so when you take drugs, what happens? Well, it fries your brain. Oh, okay, huh? What else gets fried? Eggs. Why don't we take an egg? And, you know, they came up with the idea. So I went like, oh, is metaphors the secret to emotional selling or one of the secrets? So I took the passion box and I dumped it on my bed because I needed a big space that's high up so I can see all the different samples. After 10 years, I had lots of examples. And I suddenly discovered that metaphors is one of 14 brain triggers at the heart of emotional selling. I couldn't believe it. You know, can I give you some examples?
Yes, please. You know what's crazy about that drug commercial though? Very successful, but drugs ended up winning the drugs war. Isn't that weird? Isn't that conceptually bizarre? With no budget, no commercials. You know why? Drugs are great. But yes,
yeah,
more examples. What do you got?
It gets you hooked. But Brainwood gets you hooked too. Okay. So Brad Schoenfeld is considered the top fitness coach in America. So if you're Brad Schoenfeld and you want to create a website, what would you call your website? You know, BradSchoenfeld.com? How do you even spell it? It's SCH. It's like a complicated name to spell. Right. Bradsfitness.com. He came up with a great name, okay? And he used the trigger word, okay? So I want to talk about trigger words. Lookgreatnaked.com.
Oh.
Is that a perfect name for a fitness guy? And I saw this list because I saw a list of the 50 top fitness coaches in America. And he's number one. And I'm going like, you know, Joe Johnson Fitness, Mary Fitness, blah, blah, and all this stuff. And when I get to his, it's lookgreatnaked.com. It's like, whoa, right. What a perfect, but he's using a trigger word, naked. You know, naked is a trigger word. So I want to get back to naked just for a second. But so I'm sitting and working on my computer, and right next to my computer, I've got a TV that normally isn't on while I'm doing work. But for whatever reason, it was on. But I'm not listening to it or anything else. And then an ad for Blue Emu comes up, which is this cream that you put on your joints and all that stuff. And it had a famous baseball player. I forget what his name was. But he's talking. You know, I'm not even listening until I hear him say, Blue Emu, it works fast and you won't stink. What did he just say? Stink is a trigger word, okay? It's like, what? And from that moment forward, I was watching the commercial in detail, listening, you know, to what he said. Why? Because stink woke up my brain. It's like, what? You know, I don't want you to, I have this word, vomit. I'm teaching finance people. You know, they say we look at somebody's insurance policy and they often are like mistakes in it. So we say there are all kinds of mistakes in your insurance policy. Have you seen it? I said, you need a trigger word. So I gave them the trigger word vomit. And here's how they say it. I don't want you to vomit, but have you seen what's in your insurance policy? Mm-hmm. They said it's amazing. You know, and I would work with them too. I would go on presentations with them, all that stuff. And you would see a person sitting there going, I don't want you to vomit. What? But, you know, and the listener, suddenly they wake up. It's like, you don't want me to vomit? What? You know? And it's like, it's a trigger word. And so just let me give you a couple of trigger words, show you the naked one, okay? Mm-hmm. So I work with Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett's team, and they brought me in when he was on his way to becoming the world's richest man and everything else. So it's really cool because I'm considered one of America's leading behavioral management specialists. Kind of cool.
Not bad.
And he has this great line. He says, only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. What? Now it's quiet. You're listening as only when the tide goes out do you blah, 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 blah. Naked. What did he just say? Naked is a trigger word. Only when the tide goes out. And you can watch. Tell this to somebody. Only when the tide goes out, when I watched her look, yours was like this too. We're all like this. Mm-hmm. Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming. From that point forward, you're just listening. Naked. Yeah. Huh? Naked? Oh, wow. Now your brain goes naked. Oh, a guy, you know, swimming naked. I say, brain glue wakes up the brain. It's just like a naked guy running through your backyard. It wakes up your brain. So these two guys are competing with Odwalla juice, which is natural juice that's owned by Coca-Cola.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're competing with Coca-Cola, how do you compete? Because they got like millions of dollars to spend on advertising. Well, they came up with the name Naked Juice. It works. Wake up the brain. So I have these two guys who have an advertising company. And I mean, they help people who have advertising companies. They're really good. This guy, David Bear, and his partner, I forget his partner's name, and I forget the name of their company. But so as I'm talking to them, and they're helping people who are advertisers to make more money. It's a cool business that they have. But the name of their company, I can't remember it. So I'm listening to these guys, and they're talking, and they're sort of selling me whatever else. And I said, I have the perfect name for you. Are you ready? Bare Naked Advertising. If you were called Bare Naked Advertising, everyone would remember you, and it just triggers the brain. His partner goes, yes, that's fabulous. That's our name. We got to change it. And he goes, I don't want the word naked next to my name. And he never did it. I don't know why, but when we understand trigger words and how they work, that's one of 14 brain tools. Okay. I mean, brain trigger tools. But when you understand how triggers work, it wakes up the brain. What we need to understand, that when we're talking to somebody, we think they're listening to us, but only a small part of their brain is listening to us. And often the logic part of the brain is listening to us, like me with my ads, the logic ads. But there are major studies that found that this guy who won the Nobel Prize in psychology even discovered it, that over 90% of all decision-making happens on the emotion part of the brain. And so you want to use words and tools and tricks that make the brain wake up, that trigger the emotion side of the brain. And when they do that, the brain goes, oh, what? Oh, like me with, Blue Emu, it works fast and you won't stink. What? Won't stink? What?
My question though is, so I totally agree with you, but we have 100 years-ish of data that suggests that what you're saying is correct. Why then now is everything so goddamn boring? Like to your point, that guy who said, I don't want bare naked associated with my name. Why? You're going to sell more. So from my perspective with modern marketing, if you go to anybody and say, listen, you got to include the words naked or vomit or virgin, they'd be like, oh no, I don't want to stand out. But isn't that the point of advertising and marketing, to stand out from the competition? Like, you know who George Lois is? The guy with the Esquire magazine covers.
Yeah,
and I want my
absolutely.
MTV. He has this story about threatening to throw himself out of his 14th floor Manhattan office building if his client didn't go with the slogan he wanted. It's been a fight constantly. So people hire marketing agencies to come up with some creative shit to stand out, and then they fight against you when you come up with this creative shit. Even though, again, to what I said earlier, we have all this data that suggests it's the only thing that's going to work. From your perspective, why the pushback from clients? And because is that the reason everything's boring?
Yes, because and that's why, look at the whole world. That's why, so much advertising doesn't work. And then one guy comes up, I'll pick the guys I just talked about, Naked Juice. Naked Juice competing against Odwalla. Odwalla's all over the country, all over the in a store, all over the counter and all that stuff. Yeah. And then you got, Odwalla, Naked Juice? We don't realize that it wakes us up. I mean, there are famous people like Walt Disney. I was just talking about that before we started, but I love that Walt Disney went bankrupt. Walt Disney, they were telling him, oh, he's coming out with animated cartoons. Nobody's going to watch animated cartoons. It won the Academy. I mean, it was blockbuster. He was doing stuff that's different. Steve Jobs invented stuff. And I'll even say this with me, okay? Because I'm not always, we all want an open mind, okay? And that's one of the problems with, I do coaching for people in universities, and I'm trying to teach them, you have to have an open mind, not a closed mind. So I use the example of my phone, When Steve Jobs came up with an idea of a camera in a phone, I went like, what a stupid idea. Who needs a camera in a phone? You should see my phone. It's like full of all the images and videos. And I mean, Henry Ford said, if I do, and Steve Jobs loved this line, if I do what everybody says, I'll create faster horses. Yeah. They don't want cars.
This is why I don't believe in focus groups at all. The public doesn't know what they want. And listen, I'm part of the public. I'm not excusing myself from this, but it's true. Like, you have to almost be told what you want. And they're like, yeah, I guess I want that. This is why focus groups are so stupid, because when you get people together in a focus group, they don't consume what you're giving them the way they normally would. They're being hypercritical of it. They're looking to poke holes. In a commercial, that's not how you view a commercial. It's either funny or entertaining or it's not, and you move on. But that's why we place way too much emphasis on somebody else's opinion of the thing. And I think that has to do with why everything sucks too.
Well, that's good. So Snoop Dogg partnered with Martha Stewart. What?
Right. Yeah.
And suddenly he was famous. He became more famous. Now, women's magazines are putting him on the cover. They had him at, he became even more famous because, Snoop Dogg, okay, fine. And he was great and we loved him and all that stuff and everything else. But okay, let's go on. Eventually, there's only so much Snoop Dogg we can get. But now you put Snoop Dogg partnered with Martha Stewart. It's like, what?
And you know why this is beautiful? Do you know who Rory Sutherland is? The guy that works at Ogilvy. He believes in this. He's brilliant. And he says it's the power of illogic. And he says that logic kills magic. And it does, because Martha Stewart and Snoop Dogg together is totally illogical. And that's why it fucking works. And nobody seems to understand the power of superfluous bullshit. Like, it's interesting that these two are together and friends now are doing shows. Like, that makes you want to tune in as opposed to them staying in their lane and doing the same shit all the time. So here's the thing. In terms of logic, if logic could solve your problem, you would have solved it by now because it's goddamn logical. The answer is probably the opposite of what you think it is. And I know that's hard for us in our stupid heads, but it's true. And it's sort of disappointing because everything we see now is very logical, and logic is boring.
It is boring. I mean, we're affected by emotion. Emotion is powerful. Okay. And so what you want to do is you need to learn how to trigger emotion. Let's talk about David Ogilvy. Okay. David Ogilvy was fantastic. And so David Ogilvy was doing ads for Hathaway shirts. So if you're doing an ad for a shirt company, now Hathaway shirts became a blockbuster because of David Ogilvy. Okay. And also because they have good shirts, but it became part of Warren Buffett's, it's called Berkshire Hathaway, because he bought Hathaway, the shirt company. Mm-hmm. So David Ogilvy is doing an ad for a shirt. So if you're doing an ad for a shirt, what do you have? You have a good looking guy in a nice background, wearing one of the nice shirts and a nice pair of pants, probably nice shoes or whatever. That's the same as everybody's ad. So what did he do? He put an eye patch on the guy.
Well, I have an eye patch right here. Someday I was originally going to do this show in an eye patch, but I was like, no one's going to fucking get that.
It wakes up the brain. You're looking, you go through page. What's the guy with an eye patch? And then he's smart because he knows this. He knew this. Yeah. People read the headline. A gazillion people read the headline. Almost nobody reads the text. So what did the headline say? The man in the Hathaway shirt. Now people would read the text to see why. Does it say why he's in the eye patch?
But it didn't matter. It was illogical. Putting a guy in it just doesn't fucking mean anything. But it's superfluous bullshit that works. And this is why I think. So again, I think every amateur with the website is now a marketer. But what I think people should do is they should go to their they should go to their advertising agency, their marketing agency, or their CMO and do the Birnbach Ogilvy Lois challenge. Show them pictures of Bill Birnbach, David Ogilvy, and George Lewis. If they can't identify them, fire them. Secondarily, even if they can identify them, go tell me some about their campaigns. Like, what's your favorite? And they won't be able to do it. And here's my point. Nobody studies the good shit. So no one's making good shit. Can you imagine if you went up to Tom Brady? He was like, hey, who did you watch growing up? And he goes, I didn't watch anybody. No, he fucking worshiped Joe Montana. This is, you know what I mean? It's just, there's this thing. People will argue, you don't have to know about the past. Yes, you goddamn do. You telling me Zeppelin didn't know anything about the Beatles, who didn't know anything about Elvis, who didn't know anything about Robert Johnson? Zero chance. There's a foundation. And I don't think anyone has foundation. So when you go up to somebody say, hey, you know what you should do is put somebody in an eye patch. I mean, one, that's stupid. Nobody would ever do that. Yes, they did. And it worked. You know what I mean? So it's just so goddamn frustrating.
Well, so I love emotion examples. So let me give you an emotion example. Okay. So Carrie Smith had a manufacturing company. He was making some pretty good money. So he bought a friend's company that made really large fans that they use in barns mostly, but also in warehouses. You have horses and cows. You're not going to put air conditioning. You put a fan. Okay. Yeah. So he called his company HVLS fans, high volume, low speed fans, whatever that means. Logic. Okay. Mm-hmm. So he said, and sales are like normal, it's like I sell one every, who knows, not much. So a friend said to him, if you were just talking to me and telling me what's so great about your fans, what the hell's so great about your fans? He said, they're big. He said, they're big ass fans, big ass fans. Why don't you tell everybody that? He said, really? So he ran an ad big ass fans, and sales exploded. And he went, wait a second, what if I change the name of the products and the company to Big Ass Fans? What happens? Sales exploded. He couldn't believe it. In fact, they exploded so much, he ended up selling the company for $500 million. And I say this, I love this, okay? A lot of people, I have tons of people that go, yeah, I know Big Ass Fans. I've seen it, or I know the name or whatever. I've seen them. I said, do you know who they're competing with? Tell me who they're competing with. Nobody could tell you.
No.
I have no idea what the other ones are. Big Ass Fans.
I think part of the problem is that we want to give ourselves and humanity too much credit, but we're big, dumb animals. So you make the point that like gimmicks work. I'm going to die on this hill, but alliteration, rhymes, jingles, dumb shit. Because here's the thing. If you don't get the person's attention, you can't do anything else.
Right.
And Ogilvy famously said something to the effect of, you can't bore your audience into giving a shit. You know what I mean? But we are trying so hard, it seems like, to bore our audience into giving a shit. If you had shown Ogilvy white papers and blogs and data sheets and all the other garbage we try to sell people with, he would have lost his goddamn mind. He would have been like, I've been doing this for 100 years. Oh, just read a book. I don't know, man. It's strange. But so you owned a marketing agency. Would it frustrate the hell out of you if they hired you for your expertise? You came to them with something brilliant and they go, nah, I don't want to do that. That drives me crazy.
Yeah. And it's surprising. That's why we have to teach them, that's the hardest thing to do. It's great when you get split testing. So you get a chance to show, wow, look at this takes off and yours is like doing nothing. I have this guy who came out with a martial arts equipment company. And then he made a backpack for it. He's really a fabulous company. Okay. That's a company called RevGear. It doesn't matter what it is, and so we're looking at it and I'm saying, you've got all these different types of companies. What are some of the products, that are a problem for them? And he said, what is backpacks? Because we have so much stuff to carry in a backpack. It never fits inside the thing. So you have to carry a backpack and a bag and something else to carry all your stuff. So we're brainstorming with him. So why don't you make a huge backpack? And he made this huge backpack, and he called it. And then he put like all kinds of pockets inside it and pouches. It's like there are 19 of them. So some you could hide your money and everything else. And he got so caught up in it. I said, so what are you calling it? He said, I'm calling it Travel Locker. I said, okay. Okay, I got why you're calling it Travel Locker, but here's the question. You got to remember this. What is the one reason why somebody should buy your backpack more than anything else? You made it for this. What's the reason? Big. Okay. It's
big ass backpacks. They're just a big ass everything. I think we should lean into the big ass
everything. The name you come up with, it could be memorable, but if people don't know why they should buy it, then you're screwing up.
Yeah.
So I said, let's call it it's a backpack, so letter B. So what is it? It's huge. It's like a B, the beast, a backpack so big that it holds all your gear. And I went around first he said, well, I don't know if I want that. He said, because he came up with the other name. Okay. I said, let's go around to all your salespeople and all the people in the company and ask them. And every one of them, I said, do we want to call it the Travel Locker or the Beast, the backpack so big that it holds all your gear? They said, duh. Everyone's going, duh. And so he ran the ads. His ads were going like this. These ads, when you change it to the Beast, went like this. He couldn't believe how he sold out like almost overnight.
Wow.
With the Beast. And I want to show you this, okay? So we all think Got Milk and Milk Mustache was a wonderful ad, wasn't it?
Yeah.
This is an article most people have never seen, and it's from Business Week, and it's got milked. After a $385 million campaign, sales still continue to decline.
Yeah.
Okay. Got Milk was a wonderful campaign for getting attention, but not for selling. And in marketing, we have to understand, David Ogilvy talks about this all the time. He says, it doesn't matter. If you're not selling, you're not creative. Creative has to combine two things. It has to wake up, but also wake up in such a way that people go like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Yeah. And so with Got Milk, a lot of people stop drinking milk because of a lactose intolerance. They drink milk and it makes them nauseous. So I don't have lactose intolerance, but I'm limited in how much I drink milk in case. It's stupid, but it's just it gets wired into us. So all these people who stop drinking milk, you go, Got Milk. I have the posters. I bought the Got Milk book and the Milk Mustache book and everything else. But the hell with that. I drink a small amount of milk, and it's not giving you a reason why you should drink milk. If they said there's something about milk that's better than all the other calcium things that people don't understand, there's a catalyst between certain things that are natural when you drink milk that actually make the milk make calcium more powerful when it sticks to your bones, especially if you're in sports. You want to understand it. You're actually you're wearing down your bones. And if you don't drink enough milk, okay. I don't know if that's true, but I'm just saying now people are going to go, huh, that's interesting. You're giving them a reason to drink milk. And so there are two things you want to do. You want to give them a reason to buy your product or your idea, but you also want to trigger the brain so it wakes up and goes, oh, that's interesting. I mean, and I'll just go back to the Warren Buffett line. Only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked. What he's basically saying is only when times get tough do you realize who's really capable of doing stuff. But if he said that, you'd go, oh, it's logic. But by saying only when the tide goes out do you discover who's been swimming naked, what happens to the brain? The brain goes naked. Okay, well, oh, you got a naked guy. Oh, yeah, true. When the tide, okay, oh, I guess he's trying to say, our brain works all this out. I guess he's trying to say, yeah, only when times get tough do you realize, who's good, who's really capable, and who's not. It's just you want to trigger the brain and get it working so that people are going like, oh, so they're not focusing on my car outside, it's raining, or my girlfriend or my wife or my husband or whatever else, but I'm going like, oh, phew, tell me more. And I think that's the most important thing that we want people to hear. People to say is tell me more. This is guys, shut up, close the door, I want to hear this. You got to tell me more. And that's what we have to do when it comes to advertising and marketing, is we have to make them go page stop, whoa, what's that?
So that's I guess that's what's interesting. I think if you look at I don't know how much time you spend on LinkedIn, but I think that is ground zero for the worst kind of marketing and advertising. Look at me, because it's so like, all right, I'm doing this, everybody should do this in the exact same way. So everybody talks the same way. Everybody takes cold plunges and meditates and takes cold showers and what I thought was interesting about Brain Glue is that you're giving examples of people who are different and stuck out. So you're like, you should do this, but not in the way that they're doing it necessarily. I think that's the spin that's missing. Like, you should be provocative, but not in the same way everybody else is. You got to, like, big ass fans isn't going to work for everybody, but use a trigger word, stand out. And that is, it's almost disappointing when it comes to humanity, but that one small twist, big ass, that's it. Everyone needs their own ass, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so. I need. Yeah, exactly. But you have to understand how to make people laugh. You got to make people, and it isn't just laughing, because sometimes it's more serious, but you want to make it emotional. And I think that if we're talking, and here's the biggest thing that I think people have to focus on. Okay, the biggest thing, even though we're talking about Brain Glue, you got to understand how a real buyer is different from everybody else. Okay. And so, like, I'm pissed off because, this guy I can't stand, who I work with, just bought a brand new car. He bought one of the nicest cars on the planet. I need a better car than him. Okay. So why am I buying? Why am I looking for a car right now? Hey, are you pissed off because somebody you can't stand just bought a car, bought a nice car? We'll show you how to get a better car and make them look pathetic. Are you ready? Not everybody's going to respond, but a lot of people are going to go, interesting. I was on a list of people that caregivers would try to market to. My mom was like 80 years old, but I could care less about caregivers. Who cares? My mom would drive herself, and she went and involved in all kinds of things, and she was fine. Then she got a stroke, and suddenly it was like, oh my God, right. How do you find caregivers? How do you know a good caregiver from a bad caregiver? How much do they cost? Does their insurance cover it? You start focusing. I suddenly became a hot prospect for caregivers. Okay. And then I work with a caregiving company a couple of years later, and they're just offering, do you want caregivers? And I said, let's focus on this. Did your mom or dad have a stroke recently? Do you realize that caregivers for stroke victims are different than other caregivers? Here, let me show you how. Their sales exploded because we're focusing on emotionally something that happened. And that's what we need with every one of our products is, you're selling shirts. You want to say, are you tired of the same kind of shirt as everybody else? Here, let me show you this. know, you can, you'll look 10 times better than everybody else if you have a shirt that has a collar that does or whatever,
Yeah.
But I mean, you want to understand, like, what's the motivation that makes somebody want to buy right now, or at least grab their attention and give them a reason to buy now? Because not everybody's going to buy right now. But if you start talking about that moment when suddenly you're ready to buy, even people who aren't ready to buy start going, I don't have somebody I hate, but I still got, I want a good car. You know what I mean? It woke up the brain because it triggers the emotions.
Yeah. You know what's interesting is I think B2C seems to understand this better. They still have a grasp on the idea that it should be interesting and thought-provoking and provocative and witty and clever. Within B2B, they go the total opposite, as if there are two different people on the planet, B2B people and B2C people, when in fact, we're all the same fucking people. Nobody goes to the B2B mall or the B2C mall, the B2B movie, the B2C movie, but we just have it in our head. And this is where I think that whole buyer persona bullshit comes into play, which is if you are a CEO, for example, you're one specific kind of person that doesn't do anything else. You hate contractions, you hate wit, humor, and fun. You know what I mean? So then we talk to them all in the same way, which again is the antithesis of what marketing should be. You should get their attention. Why don't you talk to them in a slightly different way? They're still humans. Do you agree that the B2C, B2B thing is that it exists, and two, that it's weird?
No. And I'll tell you why. Because B2B doesn't deal with humans.
Well,
I'm kidding. Okay. If you're selling to a human, actually, even animals probably are affected by certain things that grab their attention. But I mean, the bottom line is, no, we're selling to humans, and the same thing applies to every single person. It doesn't matter. I've worked with, some of the biggest companies in the world that are B2B. Okay. And, you're still selling to a guy or a girl who's got to make a decision. And so, just, and the same things apply. I mean, we have people are selling products, and I recognize this. And I said, the biggest problem is your product is fabulous, but technically, I don't believe people understand what it is that you're selling. So no, we tell them in our pitch all these logical reasons why it works. I said, well, let's sit down with them. And we went through an exercise with about 60 clients of this one company, and they were floored because 80% of all the clients they had didn't understand what makes their product so amazing. Okay. Right. And I said, you need to understand emotionally, you have to affect people. So they go like, hey, did you ever, whatever else it is. I want to give you an example. This is B2C, but it's a great example. So Paul Tran launched an electric razor. He invented an electric razor for men's private areas. Don't want to get into it too much, okay? But okay,
has to get done.
So he's figuring, okay, what am I going to call this? And it's a metaphor, like it's just kind of like a lawnmower. Why don't I call it the lawnmower? He changed the name of his company to Manscaped. We're gonna landscape a man with a lawnmower. Okay, so I'm in like a Bed Bath & Beyond or something like that with my wife. She's walking, wants to buy stuff, and I'm just walking around. And there's a big white poster, and it says, "The Lawnmower," with an arrow, and it's pointing to the shaver. And of course, it's got text underneath it. I walk up because there are 4 guys that are standing there that are reading the text, and I become the 5th guy who's reading the text. Oh, it's for men's private areas. Oh, 2 of the guys in the group bought one. I didn't buy one. But if I bought one, I can call my friend, hey, Joe, guess what I just bought? What? The lawnmower. Oh, you have to mow your lawn? No, it's for shaving men's private areas. You can hear him start laughing, calling his wife, hey, Mary, come here. Guess what James just bought? What? The lawnmower. Oh, he's mowing his lawn? No. He's shaving his private areas. And it becomes like viral. And so we want to understand that, a metaphor is a good place to start with this. It's just like, but be as crazy as possible. Like I said, with the naked stuff. So let me use it with brain glue. Brain glue grabs your attention, just like a naked man running through your backyard. You think that grabs your attention?
Right. See, this is the thing this is another weird thing that we do, which is that we try to figure out what the person likes, based on some weird shit in our own heads. So we create this fake persona and then talk to them in the way we think they like to be talked to. This is stupid, I think, because in high school, like the cheerleader didn't pretend to be into Dungeons and Dragons to have sex with the nerdy kids. You swap it. At no point I drive a Mercedes. At no point did Mercedes ask me what my opinion was. I just want to drive a car that makes me feel superior to other people. Steve Jobs didn't go, hey, what should we do? No, he doesn't fucking care. He just made this real cool thing. And then we want it to be cool. the light doesn't ask the moth. You know what I mean? Like, why are we catering? We should become the real cool thing. The fact that Manscaped probably didn't do a focus group. You know what guys like is weird text, somewhere interesting. They just did interesting, cool shit, and people came to them. And I think that is, once again, seems to be the way it was done for a long time. And then we decided, no. What you need to do is try to figure out through some sort of weirdo head calculus what they want to hear. Fuck what they want to hear. Tell them what, you know what I mean? Like, you can shape public persona. That's what you should do.
Well, and that's why you want to understand some of the tools, that trigger our brain. Okay. I'll give you a good example, but then I'll give you some other examples on this. Rhyme is a good one. I mean, Rhyme got O.J. Simpson off from an almost certain guilty verdict in a murder trial. If the glove doesn't fit, you have to acquit. You know, the people in the jury went like, after the trial, I remember there were two women, and one is answering while the other one is nodding her head in agreement. And the interviewer is asking, with all that evidence against O.J., how come you found him not guilty? And they went, well, we knew if the glove don't fit, you must acquit. The glove didn't fit, we had to acquit.
Yeah, it was shitty poetry. You can't argue with poetry.
Exactly. If I was there, I would have said, he's an actor, because he put on a rubber glove and then had trouble putting the glove on. If I was on the other side, I would have said, he's an actor. Remember this. You have to love how he faked the glove.
I know.
We
love spectacle. Chance. We love spectacle, and people just don't. And until the opera outsells any given Avengers movie, I refuse to believe that humans aren't the same dumb animals that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, really.
We all like explosions and nudity and words that make us feel funny. And why can't we just accept this?
Well, but so here, I want to give you two examples, okay, of categories. So rhyme works. You have Famous Amos, it rhymes. 7-Eleven rhymes. I never even realized until I started doing research how many of these rhyme. Reese's Pieces, Slim Jims, Jelly Belly, Pooper Scooper. How about Pooper Scooper? Anyone ever heard of that before?
No. Can I show you another one that rhymes that you've mentioned?
Go ahead. Lean Cuisine, by the way.
You know what this is?
Yes, I know exactly. That's the example I was going to give. Squatty Potty.
Squatty Potty. Oh, Squatty Potty. As soon as I heard it, I had to have one. It rhymes. It's hilarious.
So let me give you an example with Squatty Potty. So about 3.5 months ago, I got heart bypass surgery. Not fun. Okay, let me start there. Yeah. But I'm laying down on my bed, and nurse is saying, "So what do you do?" So I said, "I wrote a book, Brain Glue," and I started giving a story of how Squatty Potty came about. And she said, "I got to tell you something." I said, "Okay." She said, "I'm a nurse, and I know that you're supposed to raise your feet 6 to 8 inches off the floor when you're on the toilet. Most people don't know that. And so I've got a little stool in my house, and I do that. Yeah. But I was in a store, and I saw Squatty Potty, and I went, oh, that's great. I have to buy it." I said, "You have a stool, but you bought Squatty Potty anyway?" She said, "Yeah, it's such a cool thing. And the name is awesome that I definitely had to buy it." All because emotionally, she loved the name Squatty Potty, and it rhymes,
This is another thing that there's like 800 things about sales and marketing that bothers me. This is another one. This idea that it's evil in some way. Like, I thought marketing was cool because you got to be creative, sell some shit, somebody buys some shit, and they're temporarily happy, which I still think is a good thing. But we seem like the salesy aspect of it, I don't think we like, which is bullshit, because everyone's like, well, money doesn't buy happiness. Products don't buy happiness. Yes, they do. It's just a small dopamine hit, and that feels good, and then you move on. No one's saying if you buy a Squatty Potty that it's going to make your life permanently better. No, but hey, it's funny. I like to be entertained. I bought this thing. It works. I'm happy. Move on. And I just think like we associate sales and marketing with like, it has this slimy thing, which is bizarre because we get happy when we buy things that we want. I think we're spreading joy is the way I'm spending.
Absolutely. Absolutely. But we have to understand what triggers joy. Okay. I mean, it could be, sometimes we'll watch something. It doesn't have to make you laugh. You can go, it's serious, but you're watching and going, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Look at that, and it affects you emotionally. It's really powerful. But so rhyme is one of the tools. I want to give you another tool on this. Okay. Alliteration, repetition of sound.
Mm-hmm.
So with Lucille Ball and Desi Arnaz started a show that was going to change their life. Okay. And so they wanted to come up with a name for the show. So they said, well, Lucy should be in the show because you're Lucy and the whole show is going to be about you. So Lucy, what are words that begin with the letter L? Lucky. Why don't we call it Lucky Lucy? Yeah, it doesn't really work. How about like Lucy, love? Oh, love. I love Lucy. It's alliteration. It's the repetition of sound, and it works in marketing. Coca-Cola. Is this a coincidence? Best Buy, PayPal, TikTok. If they called it Chinese social media platform, you think it would be as successful as TikTok? Hey, let's call it Chinese social media platform. No. Why is it called TikTok? Alliteration. Okay. I mean, politics, they used it. Biden's Build Back Better. Trump's Make America Great Again. Google. I mean, do you think it's wow, it's just a coincidence that they came up with that? No, they understand. Buh, 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 you know, I mean, these things work. So here's one. So you're creating glue, okay? And it's really a cool glue. And you want to come up with a name. So you start with a metaphor, okay? It's powerful. It's as powerful as an elephant. So we can call it elephant glue. But now let's use alliteration, repetition of sound. What's an animal that has the letter the G? Gorilla glue. Gorilla glue. Why don't we do that? Go to the store like Home Depot or whatever, and you'll see there's a whole column of all the Gorilla Glue products. I have friends that say JB Weld is 10 times better than Gorilla Glue. JB Weld has like 3 samples, but Gorilla Glue has this whole massive column, you know, and it's Gorilla Glue, good. And there's certain things that make it easier for our brain, and it triggers, you know, the emotion sides of the brain. It's amazing. I'm just amazed by, like, I would discover this, like, alliteration, and I would start realizing, look at how many blockbuster products use alliteration. Look how many people use alliteration when they didn't have it before, and suddenly sales go up. It's like, whoa. And it's like rhyme, like we were talking about, you know, rhyme is the same. And there are certain things that trigger the brain where you go, oh, you know, yeah, it's just amazing. I mean, yeah, it's amazing how these tools work. I say with brain glue, you know, it's you want to light the brain glue. You want to light the fire of desire in your buyer. Okay,
the fire of desire in your buyer. All right,
and that's what we're doing. You know, so I make people really desire products. You know, so what rhymes with desire? Buyer. Oh yeah, desire, buyer, fire. Light the fire of desire in your buyer. You know.
I thought it was when I first got into this and first got into marketing, do you remember the Dollar Shave Club video? It was a viral sensation on YouTube.
Yeah.
Then right after that, Poopery came out. So like a very proper English woman talking about shit smelling bad and how you can cover that up. And then after that, Dr. Squatch was sort of like a redheaded stepchild. It was so clearly influenced in ripping those things off. But I thought, great, we live in the time where funny videos can launch your brand, and everybody should be doing this. But it was just a blip. People quickly forgot about this thing, and we've just moved on. And I just, you know, you have a million examples. There's been books written about a million examples. Red Bull is a thing that's constantly talked about in these books. Red Bull tastes like candy flavored battery acid, but it works.
There's something most people don't know about Red Bull. Okay. You notice it has 3 eyes. Red Bull gives you wings. Why does it have 3 eyes in the word wings? Because some idiot said Red Bull gives you wings. So he supposedly jumped off the roof of he drank Red Bull, jumped off the roof of his building, and he got injured, and he sued Red Bull saying, you said Red Bull gives you wings. I think the guy lost the case, but he sued them, and so they decided to put 3 eyes in the letter wings. But
even this is a story people can talk about, and then your product becomes talk aboutable. It's as if we're anti-talk aboutability, which is also conceptually bizarre. I just I don't know. So do you think do you think it's a good thing that people aren't leaning into this? Because if they do, like in any given industry, no one's doing interesting stuff. If only one decides to do interesting shit, like big ass fans, can't they quickly jump ahead of everybody else?
So let me say this about brain glue. So emotional people are not the best salespeople. I mean, are the best salespeople, but not the best product creators or service creators. Because logical people tend to be, and brain glue is meant for logical people, not emotional people, you know, and it's because we don't understand. If we're logical, we create we're solving a problem. You know, how do you create a product or service? You're solving a problem. You know, I mean, Squatty Potty, she was basically solving a problem. She was constipated, and her doctor said, raise your feet 6 to 8 inches off the floor and you'll feel better. She did that, and they said, we want to be on Shark Tank. It would be really cool if we invent a product. How about if we create a little stool for this? And they came up with the idea. Then they said, toilet stool. That's what it is. So you always start with the first name, toilet stool. But that's not the best name. So toilet, what's another word for toilet? Potty, like porta potty, okay? Porta potty sticks to the brain. And you're squatting, so Squatty Potty. They came up with the name. But that's what you want to do, is you want to understand, you know, Yeah, just I forget what I was saying. I was having fun with the squatty potty. I'm just thinking of that.
I think
Oh,
the
but
point is people need to do interesting shit. So I went to your website and you list all these things. And I've done some research. So I heard you talk about Rocky Road and Virgin Airlines. Virgin, again, another trigger word that everybody loves. What is the Freakonomics thing? Because I'm a huge fan of those guys and I've read all their books. What's
well, it's the word freak. There's a really good
freak?
slogan. Yeah, it's just economics. Here's another book on economics.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let me look through it and everything else. Freakonomics. What? Yeah, it's a trigger word, and they have a different way of looking at it. Okay, I remember what I want to say because it relates to this. We want to, if you come up with an idea or a product that's really great, you need to find a way to explain it to people so that it triggers their brain and they go, "Oh, I'm into that." I mean, how often do we say? And I'll go back to famous people like Walt Disney and some others, Steve Jobs and stuff that invented products, and people go,
Right.
But you start becoming passionate about it. When you become passionate, it's important. Otherwise, people just pass it. There are tons of people out there that have great products or great services, and you're struggling. Why are you struggling? It's HVLS fans, because high volume, low speed fans, they were great fans, but like almost nobody was buying them until they changed the name to big ass fans. You want people to buy into what you're offering. And so the first thing is you could logically come up with a product or service that's going to be valuable. That's what if you have a shitty product, go away. Okay. It is not for you. And if you have a shitty product, you're probably an emotional person. That's why you can't do it. But a logical person comes up with a logical, hey, we fixed this thing so people feel better or it works better or whatever else. This is really going to help them. Now you need to turn off the logic part of the brain, or partially, because you're going to use it for ideas. List all the ideas how you want to sell it logically. Now you want to start applying emotional selling, because you want people to buy it. You made this product that helps them, and nobody's buying it. I'll go back to Men Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus. He wrote Men, Women, and Relationships, and it was changing people's lives. It's a fabulous book, but that name was shitty. It was logical, and because it was logical, like no one was buying it. Now he's sold over 50 million copies, and I talk to people and they say, "Oh, I just read part of it," or read all of it, or whatever. Some people didn't even read the book. They just bought it and they end up not reading it, but they get the concept, and he got to reach out and touch all these people. So you be a logical person, come up with a product that's really great or a service that's really great. And then you want to logically come up with how you want to sell it, and then stop, because that's not what you're going to do. That's just an opening door. And now you're going to take all that stuff and you're going to apply brain glue to it or something else. But brain glue it's blowing people's minds. People love it. And you're going to start applying things like rhyme and metaphors and alliteration and some of the others. There are 14 tools, and people read them and go, "Oh, I didn't even think of that." And I'll give you an example. This is a profound example of how this works, okay? Jack and Jill went up the
hill.
We all remember that. And what was the last time we heard it? For me, like maybe 30, 40, 50, and for me, it's like 50, 60 years ago, okay? And I can be on my deathbed and somebody says, "Hey, James, what? Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water." I'll remember it forever. How do I remember it? I mean, did we hear it that many times? We might have heard it 3, 4 times. Okay. That's not enough to hit the brain, to stick to the brain. But because it's rhyme, it sticks to, and it's visual, so you can relate to it, but it's rhyme, so you can relate to it. It sticks to the brain. You want to use a tool like that. If I have a product that's great, I want to say, this is a lawnmower. Okay, I'm not ready to buy it now. And then you go home and you're thinking, okay, that was funny, the lawnmower. And you know what? Maybe I think I want to get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, weren't we a proper society when people that were logical would come up with a product and then they go, "Listen, we're left-brained," or whatever the brain, the logic brain. We don't know how to sell this, but it's a great product. Let's hire creatives to get out there and figure out how to sell this. Isn't that the way things used to be?
And yes. And the problem is that today we hire people we think are creatives, and they're not. And so you want to look at samples of things that they did and see if they're emotional samples, if they make sense logically, but they're emotional titles and slogans. I mean, you have to have emotional slogans. I love this. So I'll give you a slogan. Okay. Tell me who you think this is. Screw yourself.
I don't know.
IKEA.
That's smart. Yes.
Okay, now they ran a slogan and people complained in America, so they stopped it, but they still use it in Europe now. But it's a great slogan. Screw yourself.
Yes. Oh
okay.
my God,
here's one. I'm going to be really extreme on this one. Okay, I'm from Montreal in Canada, and when we heard the word Regina, Saskatchewan, we would go, oh, we know what that sounds like. Okay, so a few years ago they stopped it 2 years ago, saying we're sorry, we know it was offending people. Ha ha ha, because they're all the people that came visiting it on vacation and stuff, it tripled literally from they did this. So they came up with a slogan. So if you're coming up with a slogan for Regina, Saskatchewan, what would you come up with? This is so good that that the Rolling Stones talk about it at the beginning of a lot of their shows, and Madonna talked about it. Regina, it rhymes with fun.
Hey, there you go. Nice. See, this is the thing too about the United States. We were founded by Puritans for all intents and purposes, and we're still pretty Puritan. So when I see advertisements and commercials from Europe, I'm like, oh my God, this is fucking brilliant. They're not offended by everything, which is, again, I feel like we've gone so far to the other side. It hampers creativity to the point of absurdity because we're so afraid of offending anybody that if you are boring and mediocre and logical, you're not going to get fired. But if you come up with an idea that's a little spicy and might work, you could. So, we're there too.
Agreed. But the greatest inventions in the world are created here in America.
Yeah, well, if we could get European
Walt
advertising,
Disney, Steve Jobs. I mean, let's go through the list of all the, what's his name? Elon Musk. I mean, they're just, you can like him or not like him.
He's South African, but sure, we'll give it to him.
Yeah, okay, but he came here.
Right.
Why did he come here? He invented his stuff here. I mean, or most of the stuff that he's doing. He flies in space and stuff. This is not, whether you hate him or love him, so be it, okay? But I'm just saying, but look at the inventions. Steve Jobs created a phone, okay? Now, what kind of phone did he create? It's got a flashlight on it.
Yeah.
Who puts a flashlight on a phone? But you need a flashlight every once in a while. You're nowhere else. Your whole life ends up being on your phone. I wake up in the morning. I wanted to be on your call today. Guess where I put it? On the phone. Okay. Yeah.
So Americans are wildly inventive and we're offended by everything. That's a weird dichotomy. Somebody should study that.
Because we have everybody. We have both sides.
That's true.
And that's why you have to understand who creative people are. And you want to be creative too, or at least if you're going to hire somebody, you want to hire an advertising guy, you need to learn enough about creative advertising that works so that you can recognize who's good and who's not good. If they're going to show you, well, here are logical reasons why you should do this and this and this. I won major clients using logic. Kraft Foods, Timex watches. We launched a product that was logical. I didn't realize.
So humans, this is a fatal flaw. We're binary creatures and we're absolutists. So when you say it's either logic or creativity, it's not. It's both. It's creativity based in logic and facts. So you have all this shit, and then you put a layer of superfluous bullshit on top, and that's what sells. And if we could only get there, that would be the world would be a much better place.
We have our number one goal when you're communicating, whether it's marketing, advertising, or just trying to communicate an idea. You have two goals. The first goal is to grab their attention so they go, huh, what? Yeah. Tell me more. And then you explain it in such a way that they go like, and they understand, at least from your perspective. I'll give you a good example. So I saw this quote that said, Americans discard 2.5 million plastic bottles every hour.
Yeah.
Sounds like a lot, right? What if I told you that's enough to reach the moon every 3 weeks?
Right.
Whoa. What?
That makes more sense. Sure.
They're talking about right now. They're talking about $1 billion. It's $10 billion. Do you know how much $1 billion is? It's 1,000 times $1 million. How about $1 trillion? Right. It's 1,000,000 times $1 million. You can take, they have $1 trillion. You can take 1 million Americans and make them millionaires. Give them $1 million bucks.
That's part of the problem. There's no perspective. We have no idea,
And they say, we just spent, like I'm in California, they spent, with what do you call it, in Ukraine. So they gave him, there's this quote, he's sitting in being interviewed and he says, so America gave us $177 billion, but we only received 77 billion. We have no idea where the other 100 went.
Yeah.
So $100 billion.
This
Is that a lot of money? You could take 1 million American families and give them $100,000. That's how much money this is. Do you
Bunch of
realize
lost.
money that? But they don't know where it went.
That's a slight
Oh.
accounting error, and then they just lose. That's fine.
Exactly. But it's just we want to understand it when we're communicating. We have to explain it in such a way that people understand. And it's one of the things, because I work with a lot of finance companies. They talk about. I have this guy. They were selling this guy, trying to sell him this finance program. They said you make like 12% interest, and it works out really well. So you should be putting it. He was talking to a musician, a famous musician. I don't want to say who it was. And so he's talking to him while I was there. I was helping him. And he's saying, and you make 12% and and it works out this way. And I'm looking at the look on the guy's face. The guy's a musician. He's going, you can see he's not, you're just throwing numbers at me. So I said, I want you to understand this. And we knew this was true. I said, John Lennon, before he died, invested in this. And because of that, he was able to transfer most of the money he had that he had made to his family and the people that were important to him. He goes, John Lennon did that? Sign me up. Okay. It's like, give me a.
That's brilliant. That's the essence of marketing right there. Speaking his language, making him understand something, giving him some perspective, exciting him about something. That's it. Oh, yeah. Well, let's do this. Do me a favor. Stay on, but we've hit the hour mark, so I'm going to log off the official broadcast. You want to tell people where they can go get brain glue and see your other stuff?
Well, it's available on Amazon. First of all, you go to Amazon, but there's a site called yesbrainglue.com that might be fun. It has lots of information and everything else on brain glue and some videos. Jack Canfield, who sold 500 million Chicken Soup for the Soul books. He's forcing everybody in his company to read and use this. He's like, I didn't even know I did. That's just what I was using. This is how come I became so rich. Whoa. But anyway, yesbrainglue.com would be a good place to check.
Beautiful. Well, listen, you're a marketing genius, and I know that because I agree with you. So there we go.
I'm just lucky. Thank you, though.
No, man. All right. Hey, I'll be back tomorrow, America. Good night.